program.
Does the forum encourage them to, say, get into public positions, to be able to take those policy directives or decisions that will in turn impact the society?
It's interesting that you say that. You know, we see that no matter which sector they come from, getting involved in the forum and our program makes them curious about giving back to society. And 4 years ago, there was an initiative launched called the Public Leadership Initiative by YGLs, and the aim was to try to capture the interest of young global leaders, no matter which sector that they are from, to potentially serve their countries. And so we've now conducted 2 boot camps where you give them kind of the skills and training to be necessary to not only think through, is that the right decision for them? How could they have an influence on public life? But then afterwards also have the training on, you know, campaign finance and how to go through those next steps. And so we're early on in that stage, but we've already had a number of people that have gone through that program who have then decided to run for office. And because there are YGLs from the public sector, they're able to come in and give advice to their peers and provide, you know, insights as they go through that decision, and then, you know, potential campaign to get involved.
So do you get anyone who says he's been able to speak to, say, somebody in the House of Representatives, the Parliament, the Congress, and then in turn affect their decision-making process from the forum?
So there's been a number of members of Parliament. I think the most high-profile one is actually the leader of the UK right now. David Cameron was named a Young Global Leader in 2006. And has had the opportunity to meet with us on a number of occasions. So they, on their own, are already influential in their respective national assemblies and chambers of commerce, and so they are influencing certainly policy making. I think one of the ways where we've had a chance to have an influence on policy has been through a series of interactions with the presidency of the G20. So starting with Paris in France in, I believe that was 2009 or 2010, the young global leaders were called upon to come to Paris and have almost like an advisory meeting with the Sherpas for the G20. And so because they represent all sectors, they have become respected as people that can come in and give advice to the different kind of leaders, especially as there are different challenges that come up with each year of the G20 presidency. So that's one of the ways in which they try to advise, sometimes formally, sometimes informally, some of the policy outcomes.
So how do they meet? Because if you say, well, it cuts across countries all over the world, so do you have a meeting point where everyone must come together and say, this is what is happening in my country or in my region, and this is how best I think we can tackle it?
Indeed. We kind of have 2 different philosophies with that. On the one hand, we try to stage a lot of the Young Global Leader events alongside the World Economic Forum. So this year here in Abuja, we have around 65 Young Global Leaders who are here. We just had yesterday a private program in which they began to think about which are the areas that they could collaborate on. We also have a global annual summit when usually 300 young global leaders come together. This year we'll be in China, in both Beijing and Tianjin, alongside our annual meeting of new champions. But then I think what we see is important is to give them the space to kind of self-organize and provide those meetings that would be on a specific topic. So typically it would be where, you know, a couple of them would come together. Perhaps somebody from the private sector is willing to host an event on a specific topic, and then we'll be able to bring in the stakeholders that give that kind of well-rounded, multi-stakeholder image that can provide real substance to the leaders who are looking to get advice.
What about education? Talking about you going to institutions of higher learning or at any level whatsoever and impact those leaders. I mean, potential leaders are there as well. Any program like that for the forum?
Indeed, I think one of the things that we always try to do when we have our events is to also go back into the community. And so for the first time in 2010, we held our annual summit in Tanzania and began in Dar es Salaam and began a program there where not only were the young global leaders coming to the hotels and conference centers, but actually they fanned out, the 250 YGLs fanned out to 20 different both NGOs, social entrepreneurs, and schools to then try to influence each of those different organizations and the people that are the beneficiaries of them. So primarily, they would go in and share some of their expertise. So if it was somebody coming from the media, share with them how to, as an organization, how could you interact with the media? If it was going to schools, we have one global initiative called Global Dignity. So in Tanzania, we had a Dignity Day where we went to 2 different schools, I believe, and had the opportunity to teach those students kind of values of dignity, respect, how to work together no matter where you're coming from and what background. And so they were able to fan out across Dar es Salaam for a whole day, and that's something that's been a tradition that we've carried on. Our most recent annual summit was in Myanmar, which came at a pivotal time, and there we had 24 different of these impact journeys that went out across Yangon. So that's something that's very important for us. In fact, after this meeting, a group of young global leaders will be meeting in Lagos, where we'll be meeting with some entrepreneurs and also some NGO leaders to try to have an exchange of knowledge as well.
So I was going to ask if you haven't actually done anything with those in Nigeria. I know you just mentioned Lagos, and well, that's looking ahead. But before now, have you done anything with young global leaders in the country?
There's a strong group of around 25 young global leaders here in Nigeria. This is the first time we've ever had the Forum on Africa here. Informally, we've come a number of times. Elsie Kanza, who's our director of Africa, comes to Nigeria on a regular basis and meets with both the young global leaders and the global shapers in both Lagos and Abuja to seek their input on for the forum's programming. We've seen that the young global leaders here in Nigeria are interested in working together to try to support some of the pillars that they see as root causes behind some of the challenges that they're facing. But I think it's more at a beginning stage. They're beginning to build this sense of community that we're seeing across the world.
All right, interesting. So we hope you have a successful and fruitful deliberations today at the forum.
Good. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, and by the way, have you taken or tried any local delicacy at the moment?
I had yesterday the snails for the first time.
Oh, really?
So that's the only
Was it the one with the spice?
Yes, exactly.
How did it go?
It tested my stomach for sure.
Then so John Dutton is the director, Young Forum on Global Leaders, speaking to us today about what he will be doing and what they've been doing at the World Economic Forum.